up, my people? I am Bronwyn, and this week we are talking about email pet peeves. I mean, who doesn't have them? If you're a living, breathing human, you got to deal with email. And if you're dealing with email, you got some pet peeves, because guess what? Email sucks. But today, we are not focusing on the suck. We're focusing on the transformation that will take sucky bad behaviors and bad habits and things that drive us crazy and pet peeves and make them into something constructive, powerful, clear, clever, insightful, all the things. So drop me a comment, like, and subscribe. Let's dive in. All right, so if we are going to talk about email, you need to know something about me as a communication coach, right? Because my whole life is oriented towards helping people shine, whether that's on stage, in conversations, or in email. Because here's the thing, our reputation is made one conversation at a time, as Joel Peterson says. It's also made one email at a time. And here's my fundamental belief about email. Email worries me. Why does email worry me? I'll tell you why. Number one, I think it's making us stupider. In fact, listen to this quote I got from a piece of research. I believe it's from Gloria Mark's team at University of California at Irvine. It goes like this, quote, "The longer one spends on email in a given hour, the higher the stress for that hour." So let that sit in for a second. Now, the thing that worries me about email, thing number one, is that it is a stress hamster wheel. You open it, you click it, and it's like this, whether you recognize it or not. So as a communication device, it's a high stress environment. But here's what makes it so crappy. It's a high stress environment that we perceive that it's low stress, low cost, no big deal. The fact is, email is a big deal. It is a place where strategic communication happens. The problem is, when we're in email, we're not in a strategic communication mindset. We're in a rapid fire, let me just fire off answers to these email mindsets with an elevated heart rate, which means the quality of our communication is shallow, my friend. It is shallow, which leads me to my second point. Because we're in this heightened state of stress in email, because we're Twitter-pated, our quality of thinking is very low, in my opinion, right? Cognition is a little thin, it's a little shallow when we're in the inbox for all the reasons I just mentioned. And when you take a human being that's stressed, thinking shallowly, is that a word? It is now. And you combine those two things together, what you get is a lot of less than ideal, suboptimal communication patterns. And here's the thing, if you're emailing and it's a part of your work, a huge part of how people perceive you is how you handle and communicate in email. Those are my concerns. So as a baseline, as your communication coach, I'm gonna tell you this. Email sucks, use it mindfully. Use it mindfully. It needs to be treated as a strategic piece of communication. If you're like, well, Jesus, I've got hundreds of emails every day. Fair enough. Consider setting up systems that allow you to stay calm and centered. For me, the way I keep myself out of habitual stress freakout is I talk to myself out loud. Okay, this is an email from Felicia McGillicuddy, and Felicia McGillicuddy needs me to, sorry, that name. Oh, that name cracks me up. Felicia McGillicuddy needs X and Y and Z from me. Great. I'm going to delegate X and I'm going to handle Y. By verbalizing what I'm reading in my inbox, it helps my thinking become less tangled. And it helps to slow down the action, which then slows down my heart rate, which also allows me time to think about how to handle that email. So step one is acknowledging that email is fraught. Step two is about putting into place systems that help you stay strong, grounded, and connected to your deepest conscious, intelligent self instead of the rapid fire hamster wheel self. But the third aspect of this is how you actually craft responses. Because this video is about pet peeves and pitfalls, and I haven't even gotten to the pet peeves part because I really just needed you to see where my thinking comes from, right? And I will tell you, this last piece, right? The actual crafting of the email is where all the pet peeves live. For me, the greatest pet peeves are Number one, rambling. A long rambling email. I like it about as much as I like a root canal, and I'm guessing you're right there with me. Long rambling emails reveal someone who either has not had time or not had the discipline to crystallize their thoughts before spraying and praying it into an email message. Rambling emails are why we hate emails. Well, technically, it's the volume for us that we hate, and also the long and rambling nature within the large volume of emails. So for example, someone recently was like, hey, I sent you an email, but you haven't responded. And in my mind, I'm like, fair point, I haven't responded. But also, your email was 9 paragraphs long with completely disconnected thoughts, none of it thought through. And so for me, I'm having to parse through your email to discern what is the problem you're identifying? What is the ask? What's the call to action? What do you need from me? Right? That is, without a doubt, my biggest number one pet peeve is rambling emails. So let's talk about that. If you're like, you know what, I'm going to get better at this. I'm not going to be that guy or that gal. I'm going to be concise. I'm going to be clear. But how do you do that? You know, there is a practice, and you can even have a little checklist, like on a sticky note, like a little checklist. When you're crafting an email, ask yourself, what's my intention for this message? What am I trying to do here? Number 2, what's the clearest, shortest message that I can use to get this across? I love communicating in terms of problem solution. The problem as I see it is X. I think the solution could be Y, right? Crystal clear. That's easy for a stressed out person because every single person you're emailing is stressed out. I guarantee it. Even the people you think aren't stressed out, they're stressed out. Everybody's stressed. So you got to make it simple. A problem solution message, great way to keep it simple. Another way to keep it simple is to use the same approach I use for giving difficult feedback. Because sometimes in email, we have to push back or we have to weigh in on an idea that we think is a mistake. And what you want to do is the compliment sandwich, right? Lead with something positive, state what your concern is and what you think the consequence of that issue is, and then close with a positive. For me, when I'm pressed for time and I don't have time to be all flowery about the positive, what I'll say in the first sentence is, hey, fill in your blank. Hey, Felicia McGillicuddy, I love where your head is at. I love the energy behind this idea. That's the positive. Here's the constructive. My one concern is X, because if X happens, then Y is the consequence. And I don't know that we're comfortable with that as an outcome. But I do love where you're coming from. And I know the two of us or the group of us or the us of us can get together and come up with something that works, right? Use a problem solution structure. Use a compliment sandwich, right? These are ways of organizing your thinking. The third thing I want to tell you about being direct and concise and tight is to, before you hit send, read it through. What can you pull out? Can you add more white space, right? We don't want big bricks of text. Nobody can handle that anymore. Anybody who's in the copywriting business will tell you big, thick paragraphs, they don't sell, they don't work. It may work for William Faulkner, but it sure as hell doesn't work for you or me. So make a statement, create a new paragraph. Make a statement, another statement, create a new paragraph, right? That white space is like a resting place for your reader's eyes. So I really want you to think about that. Now, the other pet peeve that I have that I'm guessing you have too is the passive aggressive email. As per my last email, per our conversation, right? People can get so, my friend Erin calls it business shouting, when you're like, per my last email, X and Y and Z. Here's the thing. I have been the person that is passive aggressive in email. We all have. I will someday, it's not like it's something I've even perfected, but it's something I'm conscious of and trying not to do. So for example, if I'm getting passive aggressive with someone and I say per my last email, what I should say to myself before responding and getting passive aggressive, why the hell didn't you read my email? Is I really need to ask myself, is email the right format for this response? Am I using email because I'm afraid to have a hard conversation? If that's you, you really should consider doing my No Enemy conversation online course. noenemy.bronwyncommunications.com. It is a course that will give you everything you need to have a hard conversation with anyone, with excellence, with grace, with compassion, with authenticity. So get up on that if you're a little nervous about having hard conversations. But anyway, before you send a passive aggressive email, number one, ask yourself, should this email actually be a conversation? Should it be one of those things where we're like, time out, I can tell you're not reading the emails that I'm sending, which I totally get. You're probably overwhelmed. Is there a better way to communicate? Is there a better way to communicate? They may be like, oh my God, thank you for that. I would really appreciate it if you text me a quick issue or a quick question. Or I would really appreciate that if you put it into Slack or you put it into Google Docs. If there was some way of tracking our conversation flow, that would be better for me. Great. Now you know it's not this person ignoring you because they hate you because they think you're stupid. It's because they're overwhelmed. And we have to find the right way to communicate with them. We all have preferences. And if it's a project that's important, it's pretty important to know what your team's preferences are. Not everybody does well in email, and maybe you got to honor that. On the other hand, if email is literally where it's all happening, there could be a quick phone conversation to say, hey, I get it. We're all overwhelmed. We hate email. I promise to keep my messages concise and to the point if you promise to read them. Deal? Deal. It's a good conversation to have. The other thing too is that people don't read our emails because the subject lines are hot garbage, right? We're trying to communicate something really important about point X, but the subject line is about point Y. And so when we try to go back and, I got to respond to that message, but I can't remember what thread it's under. Name your threads. Make it super clear. Budget conversation, customer issue, whatever the subject line is, tighten up your subject line game, right? These are all ways to navigate around that passive aggressive problem. Lastly, I wouldn't say this is my biggest pet peeve. This is the most hurtful pet peeve, I believe, associated with email. And that is when someone isn't passive aggressive in an email, they're straight up aggressive. They're straight up attacking in an email. Here's what I know for sure. Nothing good comes of an attacking email. It should be last resort, right? You can recap a difficult conversation in email in neutral, clear, descriptive tones. But if you've got to come in hot at somebody and really give them the what for in whatever capacity, that is a phone conversation. That is a face-to-face conversation. That is a Zoom conversation. And again, go take my course, noenemy.bronwyncommunications.com if that gives you heartburn thinking about that. Thinking about picking up the phone. And to kind of wrap this all up, you guys, here's the thing. Email sucks. We just have to acknowledge it and know it. So much of the work my team and I do gets done outside of email because it sucks, because I hate it. The volume's out of control. People are not their best selves inside of email, but it's here to stay. We got to live with it. But by using these techniques and strategies, you can start to calm yourself down, get more clear, get more precise, get more present in your email conversations, and recognize that your reputation gets built one email at a time, to riff on Joel Peterson's quote, right? So be mindful, be compassionate, be merciful, and shine on. I'll see you next time.